Hi everyone, welcome to Smart Lesson Nigeria online virtual lesson for today with your regular host, Mr. Otaibe. It's good to have you around. Thank you for joining in the lesson session. The subject is English and the theme of English is composition, and the topic we are engaging is Introduction to composition. Introduction to composition. So we want to look at introduction to composition as the very first topic of the theme in English, so that it will help us have a background knowledge and overview of what composition is all about in English. And so let's kick off right away as we engage the introduction of the lesson that will expose us to the meaning of composition and other facts about it. And so, like you can see on the introductory slide, composition is a piece of writing. Composition is a piece of writing. So any piece of writing is called composition. It is the theme of English where we write to demonstrate our writing skills. Yes, it's a theme in English. It's one of the 5 themes in English, and the focus is demonstrating our writing skills. Because of that, its alternative name is continuous writing. So because it's concerned with writing, composition is also called continuous writing. And so let's make progress now as we come to types of compositions. Types of composition. So what are the types of compositions that exist? And so we want to look at them as we review the content of this next slide now. Compositions are basically of 3 types. Compositions are basically of 3 types. Take note, we have 3 basic types of compositions. They are letters, essays, and speech. The 3 basic types of compositions are letters, essays, and speech. Then speech is also called address. Another name for speech is address, talk, or presentation. And so we have letters, essays, speech as 3 basic types of composition. But then what's the difference between them? A letter is any piece of writing which is a message for a specific person to read. Yes, a letter is any piece of writing which is a message addressed to a specific person to read. And so a piece of writing that is sent to a specific reader is a letter. That's what makes a letter. It's addressed to a specific reader, being it a single person or a group of persons or an organization. Talking of persons in an organization, that's what we call letter. So the basic feature of a letter is that it's to be read by a specific person. Yes, it's to be read by a specific person. It's not open to the public. Instead, it's to be read by a specific person. Then we'll now go to essay. An essay is any piece of writing which is topic information for anyone in the public to read. Yes, an essay is any piece of writing which is topic information, that is information on a topic for any member of the public to read. It's not addressed to a particular person. It's not addressed to a specific reader. Instead, it's open for anyone, any member of the public, any person in the public to read. So that's what makes it different from a letter. So letter is closed. In other words, is addressed to a specific person, is restricted, whereas essay is open to the general public, is open to all readers that can access it in the public. And that's what we are talking about. And so what of speech? Speech is any piece of writing which is a message for an audience to listen to as it is being read by the writer. And so in speech, a set of persons forming an audience listen to the speech, listen to the message. It's not something that people read. Instead, people listen to speech while the writer is presenting it. And so we see the difference. There are write-ups in different settings. In letter, it is addressed to a specific reader. Essay is open to the general public to read, but speech is for a particular set of persons in an audience to listen to while the writer is reading it. And so you can see the difference between the three types of compositions, the three basic types of compositions. So let's make progress now as we start taking them one after the other. So we want to start with letters. We want to look at some facts about letters so that it will be a solid groundwork preparing us ahead of when we start treating letters on installment in details. And so we want to take note of what we have here. And so like we've said already, letters are written to specific persons. That one has been established. Letters are written to specific persons. They are written and sent or posted to the specific readers. Yes, you don't publish it. You don't make it open to all members of the public. Instead, it's been addressed to a specific person and is usually sent through post or other means. And so we are emphasizing it again here. Letters are for specific readers. They are not published and they are not open to all members of the public for consumption or to read. And so now let's see what we have next as this slide comes up with the caption heading types of letters. What are the types of letters we have? And so let's see them as this slide comes up with a summary of the types of letters. Now you can see that we have two types of letters. The first one is formal letters, otherwise called official letters, and the second one is informal letters, and another name is personal letters. So we have two basic types of letters, which are formal letters, alternatively called official letters, and informal letters, also called personal letters. So formal letters and informal letters are two types of letters that exist. Formal letters can also be referred to as official letters, whereas informal letters can also be referred to as personal letters. And so let's make progress now as we review each of them one after the other. So we want to see the difference between the two and how to recognize them in exam when presented as a question request. And so let's see what we have here. A formal letter is a letter written to a person and organization such that the content of the letter has to do with the organization. Before now, we'll say a formal letter is a letter you write to people you don't know. No! It's not necessarily letters you write to people you don't know. Whether you know the person or you don't know the person, that one is out of it. That's not the issue. You are writing a letter to a person and organization, and the letter has to do with the person. The letter has to do with the organization. That's what we call formal letter. And so the so-called you write letter to a person you know or a person you don't know, check out this. You write a letter to your mom, who is the principal of your school, apologizing for recent misconduct you were involved in this school. You know your mom, so writing a letter to your mom in that context does not make it an informal letter. It's a formal letter because you are writing a letter to a person and organization, even if it's your mom. And the letter has to do with the organization. It's a school affair, your misconduct in school. Then see the other way around. Talking of writing a letter to people you know or you don't know, it's not been an issue. Look at this. You write a letter to the governor of your state, inviting him for a dinner in your house. Now, that letter is being written to somebody you don't know. Number one. Then secondly, so that does not mean that it is a formal letter. No, you are writing a letter to a person, even though you don't know the person. The letter has to do with the person, not the organization where the person is. The governor is part of the state government, but this time the letter has nothing to do with the state government. It has to do with him. That makes the letter an informal letter. And so Henceforth, we should drop the idea of you write a letter to a person you know, informal letter, or a person you don't know, formal letter. No. When you write a letter to a person in an organization and the letter has to do with the organization, formal letter. When you write a letter to a person, whether it's in an organization or not in an organization, and the letter has to do with the person, informal letter. It's as simple as that. And so that's what we're talking about. So again, a formal letter is a letter written to a person, an organization, such that the content of the letter has to do with the organization. So the idea of you know the person or you don't know the person is out of point. It's out of it. You are writing a letter to a person in an organization, and the letter has to do with the organization. That's the idea. See an example here. This is a sample past question on a formal letter. See what we have here. You have been sent on an indefinite suspension for the part you played in a recent disturbance in which valuable school property was damaged. Write a letter to the principal of your school describing the part that you played and apologizing for your involvement. You are writing a letter to a person in an organization, that's the principal in a school, and the letter has to do with the organization because the disturbance now was a school affair. This is a formal letter. That's how we analyze it. So the same principal could be your mom. So it's not a matter of whether you know the person or you don't know the person. That's what we are talking about. And so we want to take note. So that's how we recognize them in exams. So let's talk of the other one, informal letter. An informal letter is a letter written to a person such that the content of the letter has to do with the person. Whether the person is in organization or the person is not in organization, the content of the letter has to do with the person. That's what we call informal letter. Yes. So it's not about you know the person or you don't know the person. You are writing a letter to a person, and the content of the letter has to do with the person and not an organization. That's what we call informal letter. And so we have an example here. Check it out. You have spent about 6 weeks in your new school. Write a letter to your father telling him about your experience so far. So what you are writing in that letter, what the things you are writing in that letter have to do with your father. It has nothing to do with the organization your father is working. And so that makes it an informal letter. And it's not necessarily about the father, you know your father or you don't know your father. It's all about the content of the letter. The content of the letter have to do with your father, not his organization. And it has nothing to do with whether you know your father. That makes an informal letter. So this is a typical past question in one of the WAEC exams before now. And so the first thing you do when it comes to letter is to know the type of letter you are writing. And that will now set the pace as to how you are going to design the protocol and the templates that the letter will be written with. And so we have seen how to recognize the type of letter. It's not about whether you know the person or you don't know the person. It's about the substance of the letter. Does the letter have to do with an organization, or the letter has to do with personal affairs of the person to receive it? That's what will tell you whether the letter is a formal letter or an informal letter. So we want to take note of all of this. Then we now come to these sessions. 2 standard rules that apply to any type of letters in exam. We have 2 standard rules among other rules that apply to any type of letter you are writing in exams. Now, what are they? Let's quickly review them as the content of this slide. Now, the first one says, use your school address for any type of letters if the content of the letter has to do with education. Now, if an examiner is giving you a letter to write, whether formal or informal, whether formal letter or informal letter, and what you are to write about concerns education, has to do with school things, concerns education, then you are going to use the address of your school as the writer's address, not your home address. We have conditions to use home address. So condition to use your school address is when what you want to write about has to do with education. For example, write a letter to the Minister of Education complaining of substandard teachers that are present in schools recently. What you are writing about has to do with education. And so you will use the address of your school as the writer's address. But if it now comes as write a letter to the divisional police officer taking care of your territory, appreciating him for prompt response to a crime scene that happened in your street recently, it has nothing to do with education. And so the writer's address in that letter will be your domestic address, your home address. And that's what we'll have in point number 2. Use your domestic or home address for any type of letters if the content of the letter is not concerned with education. And so if what you are writing about has nothing to do with education, you use your home address, whether formal or informal letter. But if it has to do with education, you use your school address. That's what we're talking about. And so let's make progress now. Then the third one, the date on the address of any type of letter written in exams must be the same as the date of the English exam in which you are writing the letter. Yes, when you are writing dates, after writing address, we have date. We are coming to all of these in future classes. If you are writing the date you will use must be the same date you are writing the exam, the English exam. And so if you are writing your English exam in which the letter is set as a question on May 26th, 2024, then your date in the letter will be 26th May 2024. That's what we are talking about. And so we want to take note of all of this. And so let's make progress now. We are through with letters. We now come to essays. Let's come to essays and see what we have concerning essays. And so again, as emphasis, essays are written for everybody in public. Yes, it's not addressed to anybody. It's open. It's written for everybody in public. They are written and published through media, sometimes in newspapers, and other related magazines. And so it's not addressed to a particular person, but open to the public for consumption. That's one quality of essay that differentiates it from a letter. But then, what are the types of essays that exist? What are the types of essays we have in English? We have 5 basic types of essays, and they are itemized here for our recognition. The first is argumentative essays. The second is narrative essays. 3, descriptive essays. 4, expository essays. And 5, creative essays. So these are the 5 basic types of essays we have. Again, argumentative essays, narrative essays, descriptive essays, expository essays, and of course, creative essays. But then, what's the difference between each? What's the difference between them? And what are sample questions capturing them so that we'll know how to recognize them in exams? We'll be taking them one after the other for the subsequent slides that will come up. The first one says, an argumentative essay is an essay in which the writer makes a claim and supports it. Yes, that's what we call debates. It's an essay in which you debate. You make a claim, then you support the claim by furnishing some evidence to back it up. Yes, it's an essay in which the writer makes a claim and supports it with credible and realistic evidence. It usually takes the setting of a debate. That's what we call argumentative essay. And it's very easy to recognize in an exam. You see a sample question. You are the chief speaker in a debate on the motion. That's already told you that it's argumentative. So when you hear debate, it's argumentative essay. You are the chief speaker in a debate on the motion, violent video games should be banned. Write your argument for or against this motion. So anytime questions come like this, then you know that it's an argumentative essay, where they are telling you write for or against a claim that is being established in the form of a topic. So that's that for that. So that's argumentative essay on this introductory stage. More will come when we have a class focusing on it in details. And so let's go to the next one. We have this next one as narrative essay. A narrative essay is an essay in which the writer tells a story of an event, experience, or an incident which happened in the past re-experience, re-incidents, re-event that happened in the past as if he was an eyewitness. Usually, the writer is an eyewitness. But in your exam, it does not mean that you were an eyewitness. What you do is you write the essay as if you were an eyewitness. That's how it happens in exam. So that's why you're having it as if he was an eyewitness. So the topic they will bring is possible you actually did not witness it, but you will write it as if you were an eyewitness. Like you are going to learn as to the rules governing narrative essays, they are always written in past tense. Yes, because the event happened in the past. So see a sample question that has been featured in different years in some exams. So this is a typical SSA past question or narrative essay. It says, you were among a group of students from your school who went on an excursion to a place of interest in your country. Narrate to your classmate who did not go what you saw in the place visited and how you have benefited from the experience. So as far as it's something you witness and you are asked to relate it, you are asked to bring it up, you are asked to relate the experience to those that were not there, is a narrative essay. So that's how we recognize it in exams. And so let's make progress now to the next one. We have what we call descriptive essay. A descriptive essay is an essay in which the writer describes an object, person, place, or event that the writer is familiar with. You are describing. Describing means you are creating meta picture in the mind of the reader. Yes. So you're either describing a person or an object or a place or an event that you are familiar with. You can only describe what you are familiar with. That's descriptive essay. See how it has come before now in one exam. It says, write an essay for your school magazine describing the man you admire most. For you to describe the man you admire most, you are familiar with the person. Yes, the person you admire most, you have seen the person. So they are asking you now to write an essay to describe the person. That's what we call descriptive essay. That's a typical descriptive essay. So it was featured before now in one of the external examinations, and we are bringing it here as a sample question to demonstrate types of question based on descriptive essay, and you have seen it. And so we want to take note of this. So let's make progress to the next one. We have what we call expository essay. An expository essay is an essay in which the writer explains. Expository has to do with explains. The writer explains a topic or a concept that is not well known. Yes, you explain a topic or a concept that is not well known. So the focus of expository essay is explanation. Remember, description is different from explanation. Explanation, you are giving details of something, whereas description, you are highlighting the qualities. They are two different things. So we want to take note of that. See a sample question. Write an article for publication in national newspapers on why you think a woman should be your country's next president. Yes, so you are going to explain points. You are going to give points, points as to why a female should be the next president in your country. That's an expository essay, and so that's how it comes. Like this one actually was featured before now in one of the SSC examinations, and so we want to take note of that. So we now come to the next one, which is creative essay. A creative essay is an essay in which the writer tells an imagined, that's something that is not real, an imagined story to illustrate a saying, but sometimes it could be real. Most times it's an imagined story, but very few times you see it as a real story. But the bottom line is you are saying a story to illustrate a saying in the form of a proverb, or a saying in the form of something that is true, something that is practical in the society. Yes. So how do you know a creative essay? They will tell you to write it to illustrate a saying. Write an essay that ends with the expression, you are writing an essay to illustrate a saying. That's what we're talking about. See an example here, like it was featured in one WAEC exam before now. Write a story which ends with the words, "Had I known, I wouldn't have believed him." So this is an essay that is telling a story to illustrate a saying. And what's the saying? Had I known, I would not have believed him. That's what we're talking about. It's very easy to recognize because they will present it in a way that it will illustrate a saying. If it will not illustrate a saying and the story is read, then it will be a narrative essay. And so creative story, creative essays can be confused with narrative essays. But to avoid the confusion, the differentiating factor is that the creative story, the creative essay is always written to illustrate a saying, to uphold a saying, to support a saying. Whereas narrative essays are not written to support a saying. Instead, they are just being written as narration for people to be acquainted with the story. That's the difference, and we want to take note of it. And so let's make progress now to the next one. We are done with essay now. We now come to the next category or the next type of compositions that exist in English. Talking of speech, like we said, speech is also called address. Yes, address. And so what do we have about it? Now, like you can see on the slide, a speech is written for an audience to listen to. We've said this before. For an audience to listen to. You don't read speech. Audience don't read speech. They listen to speech. It's the writer that reads it for the audience to hear and listen. That's speech. So it's written for an audience to listen to as it is being read, usually by the writer. Sometimes it may not be the writer. Yes, that's what we are talking about. Situations in which it's not the writer may be, for example, the president comes up to deliver a speech on national broadcast. He is not the one that wrote the speech. Possibly he's one of the advisors. Yes, he's one of the advisors that would have written the speech. But he's reading it and the audience is listening. That's the most important thing. The audience listen to the speech while it is being read by either the direct writer or otherwise. And so we want to take note of this. See a sample question that had been featured before now in one of the exams. That was a speech question, and it reads like this. As the senior prefect of your school, write a speech you will deliver to new students on what they should do to make their stay in the school a success. This is speech. We want to take note of that. And we have ways we write speech. We have protocols we follow. The protocols for every type of composition we've reviewed in this lesson, they are coming up in future classes. What we've had now is just an overview to be familiar with the scope of composition, overview of composition, so that we'll know the scope and the things that are present in composition, and we have actually become acquainted with them. And so that's it on this lesson series. On this evaluation stage now, you are recommended to log on to the smart test portal. Log on to do your smart test so that it will help to exercise the points we have exposed in the progress of the lesson, and they will become part of you. You've been equipped to know what to write at a time in an exam. That's the focus of this lesson. But as to how to go about writing a particular type of composition, those parts of composition will come up as we have instrument symposium classes on compositions in the future. I'll be signing off now. Let's make time together to learn again in the next lesson series as we engage something new on a different subject platform. I want to assure you that your presence in this lesson is sweet and appreciated. I'll see you again in the next class series.